shows are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Welcome to the Edventures in Tech podcast, talking the latest tips and trends in educational technology to innovate and engage your students. Here are your hosts, Andrew and Dan.
All right, back and better. This is episode 60 of Adventures in Tech. My name is Andrew.
And my name is Dan.
We're super excited you've joined us on this venture. Of course, if you like us, our content, please help us out by providing feedback and a rating on wherever you download your podcast. We really greatly appreciate your support. Dan, anything else going on new that you wanted to kind of touch base upon?
Podcasting.
That is true.
We're podcasting again. A lot of student projects.
Yeah.
I know I've been working on a few. You're working on a few. We're going down the world of video podcasting right now.
As you can see.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go.
We're definitely delving into some new uncharted waters and working on a lot of projects, as Dan mentioned, that revolve around podcasting and video podcasting because it's kind of taking everything over. So that's kind of a lot of what we've been kind of experimenting with. That's kind of where we're looking towards the future and future-proofing things to make sure that we are on point and we bring all that information and everything to you guys as well, as that's super important. So, alrighty. I don't want to go into any weekly wind-up news. I really want to get to our special guest today. And anything else you want to touch upon, Dan?
Nope, just make sure you have your paddle.
Very excited here today. We have Will Jackson, who is the CEO and co-founder of Mote, which is for those unfamiliar, but you should be familiar, it is a tool reshaping how educators and students use voice to connect, give feedback, and engage. It was a big thing, especially coming out of the pandemic with hybrid and remote learning. And Will, before we get into 2.0, right, we've had Will before on the podcast, and it was join the Mote boat, jump on the Mote boat. Can you just give a little bit of, like, Mote's origin story and Conquer, because that's when that was really coming out as well, and how it really is just kind of, risen to the top of feedback and audio tools in the educational space?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, Andrew and Dan, it's first off, it's great to be back.
Yes.
It's about 2 years, I think, since our last conversation on your podcast. And it's about 5 years since we founded Mote in those early days, just before those dark early days of the pandemic closures. And so I guess if I wind the clock back even further and talk about that origin story that you asked, the company, the idea for Mote came out of a simple observation, which was when you're trying to work remotely with anybody and you're trying to use text to communicate, first off, it's very time consuming. And secondly, a lot can get lost in translation. And I experienced that firsthand working in some big companies that wrote lots of memos and spend a lot of time refining and improving those memos and commenting on those memos, and still had to spend lots of times in meetings to discuss. So that was my insight, was like this form of collaboration was pretty rubbish. And so we came up with the idea for Mote, and when we launched it, it was educators who really jumped on board the Mote boat, as we say, very quickly. And that was super exciting for us. Clearly, it was a very unusual time for education. And so we saw that as an opportunity to help educators, to help teachers and students all around the world at this very difficult time. And that became our mission. And really, we haven't looked back. So now it's 5 years later. We've had Mote, and we'll talk more about some of the great new stuff we've been launching with Mote. We also have another product called Conquer, which we were talking about 2 and a bit years ago when AI was this new, hot, exciting thing. And I think we've learned a lot over those past couple of years. So really happy to talk about that as well.
That's great.
That's great. So one of the things that I want to lead into is it just seemed like, not to, I can't believe it's been 5 years since that first came out. I remember seeing that the first time and talking. And it was kind of, I don't know what the right word is, coincidence, serendipitous, that, all of a sudden, we came into an environment where where voice really was needed as a tool, because so often I think that's forgotten about. And that's why, I think Mote has really made an impact, at least when I'm working in learning environments with students. And the features is the power of voice. I mean, here we are, we're on a podcast talking about the power of voice, but to be able to make that connection in a seamless manner, it really provides a lot of opportunities for growth in students, for making those connections, for building rapport, to having valuable feedback loops, or as you like to call them, Mote loops, which are a great thing, but it really furthers connection. So, from Mote's, from its outset, really started making the connections. And then really I can see over time how the focus has really adapted to using voice and making more connections for more learners and making a seamless platform. So can't wait to discuss how Mote has grown and all the new features that are available now through the extension.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think we'll talk about the new stuff, I'm sure, today, but I 100% love the fact that the voice connection, brings that human, that one-to-one. Like, I love reading messages from teachers who tell me how Mote has helped them, help students who I know are stuck at home because of a surgery, or because the teacher can't type because they've had they've got advanced problems with their hands, or in other ways immobilized. So we've had these amazing stories that really are inspiring, and obviously those cases are extreme, but I think even on a day-to-day basis, we hear just giving students, again, we talk about student voice, but giving students an opportunity to use other ways of expressing themselves. I think, honestly, I didn't know that something like 20% of students have some form of learning difference that means that they struggle to, whether it be extreme forms of dyslexia or just be subtle forms of dyslexia. I would say, me personally, I've always been a pretty good student, but I very much prefer and feel comfortable listening to content and learning that way. So if I have a choice, I have an option to an audiobook or a podcast to learn something difficult, that's my preference. And I think that realizing that for a lot of students, that is also true has been really inspirational. But again, for me, that core aspect of making it impactful for a teacher and a student to connect has been, is the guiding star. So for a lot of what we've done.
That's great. So, we're talking with Will Jackson, CEO of Mote, and talking about Mote 2.0, what's new, what's next, and the launch, and what really differentiates it from the original Mote Bow. It's just a new, shinier version of it. For those that may be unfamiliar with it, it integrates with all the Google Workspace, Canvas, all those student platforms, and the big things. And we're going to talk about what are the standout features of Mote 2.0 and how do they enhance teaching and learning experience, since the pandemic is in our rear view. How do they really help educators in general?
Yeah, so that is really the essence. So we talked about that journey, focusing on voice, and through that, lots of conversations with teachers and lots of observation of how teachers have been using Mote. And one of the things that we learned was using Mote for accommodating students, whether they are special education students with special needs or English learners. This was a huge part of how teachers saw Mote helping. So again, we've been learning through that there are lots of gaps and lots of deficiencies in the tools that teachers had at their disposal. There might be some tools out there that provide text to speech, but maybe they don't work in the apps that teachers are using. Things like Google Slides or Google Forms, which a lot of our teachers use every day, right? But actually the text to speech opportunities for students was really weak. And so teachers are creating voice recordings as a workaround. Also, some of the other software out there that's been used for accommodations perhaps is not the friendliest, to put it mildly, for some students. Maybe they find it difficult to access, or they just find it not very enjoyable when they do access it.
Right.
And so our focus, again, coming with a fresh pair of eyes, has been, how do we make tools that students want to use? How do we make accessibility something that doesn't make a student feel, out of the loop or something other than, but it's something that everybody will want to use. And so nobody feels left out, nobody feels othered when using this type of software. And it's really struck me. I've spent some time in the classroom with some of our customers, and that idea of inclusion, that idea of not having any student feel left out, is something which, again, it wasn't as obvious to me then. Now it's very clear to me how important that is.
Oh, absolutely. And it just makes me think of, going back from Mote's beginning to where it is now and the whole evolution of it. It just ties so well in with the idea of the universal design for learning, UDL, being able to provide opportunities. And I think for all learners out there, because I think every student, no matter where they're at, can benefit for having some of these tools available to them to help them in their work environment and design their learning styles. But it really allows for, I think in many ways, first of all, the Mote integration into Google Workspace is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, so whether you're working in Google Docs, you're working in Google Forms, you're working in Google Slides, you always have the connection to the audio there, which is great for students. So we're not jumping any barriers to go to, yes, we're going to a third-party thing, but the extension is integrated so well, it doesn't feel like we're using a separate program. So I think our listeners and teachers out there should realize when you're looking at Mote, you're looking at a fully integrated tool into your Google Workspace. The next thing, that makes me think of is it really helps provide the least restrictive environment for students, since it's available everywhere they're working, and it can be available to all students. The access to it, the ease of use, everything is right there for the student, and it really doesn't have to be a separate thing that only some students need to use or can use as part of their IEP or whatever it is. So the integrations are great. And looking at where it's come into the new version of having that text-to-speech, that speech-to-text, the translation features, everywhere it works is just a great opportunity for those classroom teachers who need to provide resources for students in multiple languages. It's all right there. So if you can talk a little bit about how that text-to-speech, speech-to-text, translations, and that whole system works for any student that's using it on their device.
Absolutely, I'd love to. So the biggest for us, it's funny because, the path into this for us has been through this realization that actually now the technology is so good in terms of cloud text-to-speech that this was meaning that we could save teachers more time by not requiring them to create these accommodations and supports that were originally required. So this realization we have was that actually teachers were using Mote a lot to provide those voiceover, those read alouds for students in assessments or just in classroom instruction as part of those UDL considerations. We're like, hang on a second, actually the technology is so good, that we can relieve teachers of that need in those cases where this is just reading stuff aloud, right? It doesn't mean that teachers shouldn't still use voice to communicate in authentic ways. But if it's just reading stuff aloud, then actually the technology is pretty good now, especially if you're using the cloud. So we set out to create cloud text-to-speech product that was deeply integrated in all the ways that we've discussed, was super quick, was super visual, super easy for students to understand. Just click a button and it will read. Select an area, it will read any text on the page. So that was kind of our starting point. And then obviously another key feature of Mote for many years now has been like integrated translation. So of course we knew that had to be part of this as well. And so we've done a lot of work to make translation super easy through very easy ways to kind of select text and translate text on the page. We mainly focus, I will say right now, on like English to translate to other languages.
Sure.
But also this will be universal and translate any language into any other language. And so translation is really core. And then the third key feature that we've rolled out recently is is this realization. So I kind of give people this this sort of trick question. Maybe it's not a bit unfair, but I would ask people, like, what do you think is the most common language that people translate Mote? So when people are recording Mote, what language do they translate into the most, do you think?
I mean, I would say from my experience, I'm probably wrong, but I would say in our environment it's Spanish, but I'm thinking on a global
That's
level.
what I would say too.
Yeah, which is a good guess because you're coming at it from a teacher's point of view. In fact, the answer is English, because the majority of the users using that translation are students recording in their own language and translating into English to share. So a lot of the time, and one of the things that we realized, a year or so ago, was that actually that transcript that we generate when students are recording is really valuable, especially for those students who are less confident with their spoken and written English. But also students who are less confident with their just with their written English. So we've added this, made it very easy for people to kind of record their voice and then grab that transcript, drag it into the page. But now we've gone one step further, and now you can use Mote for voice typing. So you can be in an email, you can be in Google Classroom, you can be in Google Docs, you can be anywhere, any application. Click the button, speak, stop, and within a matter of a couple of seconds, you then have your text, your transcript, that you can then easily either automatically add to the page, or you can just copy paste it in. So we've made that really, really seamless, and I'm confident that's going to be a winner with a lot of our teachers and students.
I agree. I think there were a lot of challenges that you were trying to solve that you saw out of 1.0 that 2.0 has now fully addressed compared to that original version of Mote, and how much things have changed. And when we talk about leveling the playing field in education and accessibility, I know you were touching upon supporting diverse learners, ELL, students with IEPs, and the equity issue that we hear about, giving every student a voice pretty much literally and figuratively, right? And empowering that student agency through multimodal expression. It's a huge thing. And, Mote also reduces the teacher workload while increasing meaningful feedback, So when we talk about leveling all those things, like, how does the voice in general feedback change the feedback loop for both students and educators? Yeah.
That's such a good question. I mean, we can't talk about feedback without talking a bit about AI. And
right.
And
I was going to get to that, Will. I was going to get to that part.
So let me, and I have a little bit of a high horse here, but I'm also a pragmatist. But I will tell you, like 5 years ago, when we set out the company and we were thinking about voice, I remember saying to people, one of the benefits of using voice feedback is that you can use your student's name, you can tailor it to that student, and they can hear the authentic nature of what you're saying. And that goes a heck of a long way to making your point and making an impact on students. Now, we have a lot of teachers, a lot of educators who totally understand that message. But I will say, sadly, we've not been able to reach every educator with that message, because I think it was counterintuitive for some people. Maybe they see feedback as just another thing they have to do,
right,
on top of a lot of work. And that is frustrating and disappointing. But at some point, we can't solve every part of that. Now, I know that in recent years, there are some very impressive AI products out there that are getting really good at providing structured feedback on students' work. And I think that is great. And I think that we should give students direct access to those tools, right? I think, why wait? If a teacher is just going to click a button and give AI feedback, why should a student have to wait a week for that? Why not just let the student click a button and get that feedback? And I know there are one or two tools out there which are doing that, and I think that's great. But in my opinion, students should be empowered to get that feedback. We should absolutely have tools to monitor how students learn and how they're using AI to improve their work. Absolutely. But we shouldn't be encouraging them to do that, because it would be insane for us not to be helping us to build this kind of AI literacy, in my opinion, right now. Right. So there are still important skills to learn, but they have to sort of learn how to integrate these tools into their work. Now, so therefore, what should a teacher be doing? Well, a teacher should still be hopefully this means that when the work does get to the teacher, and they can click, again, the teacher should click a button and see, has this been AI generated? And I think, let's just say it's not, I think there are tools. I think Brisk has a great feature, which allows you to see, what's the process here? Whether it's AI generated, what's the process? I love that. And I think that is exactly the right kind of tool, because I think that actually identifying AI content is going to be really, really hard. But I think then a teacher can look at the end product and hopefully use Mote or something else like Mote to give really high quality, really clearly human feedback on that student's work. So that would be that's my soapbox.
That's okay. You can stay up there. I like the message that's coming from up there. Like a lot of things you're saying, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the whole idea of students should be engaging in this process now, because it's one of those things that AI has been integrated into everything. There's not going to be a future without it. And I think we have a responsibility as educators, despite our personal biases or whatever it is, that we need to expose students to this environment in a meaningful learning way. And I like how you brought up like the AI, detectors or whatever. I mean, they're not reliable.
Right.
And of course, I mean, any good teacher is going to know the voice of their students and how they're putting their words. So when they see something out of the norm, you don't
it's
even
flagged,
it's already there in your vision. And I'm not going to be the one as a teacher that's going to say, hey, you used AI to and they're going to turn around to me at some point and go, okay, prove it. And I'm like, well, this detector said you did. And like, okay, prove it. And you really can't. That's why I like things like Brisk, because it's about a process. It shows you the amount of time invested in, but also on another metacognitive level, it gives teachers an insight to the way the students are writing itself, which I think is something that's really valuable. And I think that using those types of tools and students being able to, like Brisk has a great student feature where you can put your rubrics and expectations and they can run the feedback just like a teacher has, which allows for that process. But as you're sitting there collaborating with a student in a Google Doc, and whether they're using an AI extension or doing it, Mote's right there. Mote's right there. Anytime I hit comment, anytime I hit feedback, where I can easily look and share my thoughts as a human with the students on their writing process. And that's where I think the human connection can really come in.
It's a proof of work.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it proves that you care. I spent a lot of time, and we could spend a whole hour talking about feedback, because I've read a lot of books, a lot of papers on the topic, and I feel very strongly about it. I also, I felt like there was a limit to how far we could go just focusing on trying to sell that message, because honestly, it's a little disappointing how few schools will invest, will make this a priority for teachers, will make this a priority for students, will support teachers who say, students need to read the feedback I'm giving them. Students need to, students have the expectation that they get feedback. And so it's been a learning, it's been a journey for me. But the teachers who do understand that message and do apply it, I think it's probably one of the keys to their success as educators. And I think, more than ever, teachers are going to have to find ways to create those moments of personal connection with students, which could be, one-to-one at your desk in conference in the classroom, or going around the room. But I think Mote is a great way to extend beyond the classroom and demonstrate that connection.
I want to just touch upon something that you just said that kind of, resonated with me, Will, was we talk about the neuroscience and the power of voice, right? We're on a podcast now and people are listening. There's always an emotional connection and there's cognitive processing benefits of hearing versus reading, right? Every learner is different, in that regard. And I do think that voice feedback builds stronger relationships between teachers and their students, even though they're in person now, pretty much all the time, right? And I think people have to just understand that Mote taps into that emotional power of voice to improve student outcomes, which is what all educators are really in the game for, right? That's the end game, is to improve outcomes, for the students. So that really resonated what you said, that the emotional connection is going to be powerful, and Mote kind of really takes care of that. When, we talk about Mote in action and different, I know you said you've worked with a lot of different schools, or you've seen it in action, use cases, innovation, how people are using it. Things that come to mind, and I kind of was wondering, I can think of some real world classroom examples, whether it's, multilingual support, which we've touched upon, and reading fluency. That's huge. I was, audio annotations, reflective practice, all that's in my mind. But have you seen any students using like student voice journals? Right? Like, it's kind of like a thought process. I said, well, you know what? Because it could be out of need, or it could be out of just, desire for the students, to have a student voice journal. And if you have seen that, I have a follow-up question regarding AI, but I want to know if you've seen, like, as a use case, student voice journals at all, or maybe any of your team.
It's something that I don't think I have ever seen. I have seen it only in I've seen reflections, like students being encouraged to provide reflections in a structured way in class, and to reply to, sometimes teachers will say, I'm going to leave you a voice note with Mote. Now you're going to reply with a voice note and comment on the feedback that I've given you. Right. And so again, like modeling a way of thinking, a way of working. So I have seen that. And I know some teachers found that really successful. In terms of like regular voice journaling, so this we were trying to talk about is like, how might one create a regular behavior? It's actually something which is really interesting. I think voice journaling has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
If we can track the user experience. I think I'm not sure that I do think that there are some people for whom speaking to their laptop is still a bit uncomfortable or a bit unusual, but speaking to a phone is a little bit easier.
Right.
So probably the right form factor is a mobile phone rather than a laptop, for what it's worth. So yes, it is something that has occurred to me, and maybe there's an opportunity to do something interesting there.
Maybe it's actually going to grow from here now, right? In that general. And what made me really think of is the other night I was watching with my kids. We were watching, because I knew we were talking today. We were watching Avengers Endgame. And, I don't know if you saw the movie, but Tony Stark, Iron Man, talks to his talks at the end, and that's how he leaves his final voice memo prior to the big battle. And I was like, wow, that's like a journal of sorts. He's journaling, as a research scientist, everything throughout. And his last message, he didn't know it was going to be his last message, but I was like, well, that's kind of like what Mote does. So I was kind of like, connecting with that. I want to just ask too, I know we started touching upon AI. With 2.0, how is that adapting to the evolving landscape of how AI in education is quickly just shifting gears in the paradigm?
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, as you know, before I jump to that, we have another AI product in the market called Conquer.
Yep.
We started work on it before ChatGPT was released. So we were pretty early to that. And we've been developing with AI now for 2.5 years or more. And I now spend quite a lot of my working day using AI tools. So I really personally love using AI. I think the whole question of AI in education is really, really complicated.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not sure I've given you one point of view about where I think it's helpful. And you can infer from that, I made a decision about certain things that I felt like I wanted us to be focusing on and using with AI, and then things that I didn't. I think that there are some amazing use cases, like text leveling. So if I think about tools that we don't get often with Mote 2.0, but make a bunch of sense, and we probably will, we'll be using AI for text leveling. I think it's pretty good at that now. There's a few other use cases, there's a few features we'll be launching very soon that will either incorporate AI or have used a lot of AI in their development. I think, using AI to make features that perhaps are quite familiar to users, but make them better. So, text to speech,
right?
Okay, would you say that I think we're using AI, those are AI powered sort of neural voices in a human-like experience. So that is a form of AI. But there are various other ways that we're going to incorporate that technology. I talked earlier about like the voice typing experience. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that a natural development of that would be to help people refine and improve their voice typing in some ways. Sometimes, I can like ramble on and leave a voice note, but then I would say like, hey, take my voice note and then do X with it, right? Like sharpen it up, clean it up, turn it into bullet points. It's very easy to use AI to do that. People are currently having to do that through a round trip to ChatGPT.
Right.
If we could build that into the product in a really simple way, that would be nice. So I think I'm all in favor of bringing in AI where it just makes everything feel more effortless and just better designed. I really like that. And that was so Conquer. I'm really proud of the product we built, and it still stands up, frankly. It's super easy to use. It's super quick. It's designed around a very clear user workflow for teachers. And we haven't added too many bells and whistles to it because we felt like that assessment generation problem was a really important one to focus on. I think that I think what's really hard in this space is to figure out that line between good applications of AI and less good applications of AI.
Yeah. That is a challenge in education for sure. So
one of the things I want to bring it around to, because I mean, we've been talking for a while, not only in this podcast, but over the years. And we're very familiar with Mote and how it's implemented. And we've seen, like, from we first talked to you years ago till today, how your vision has pretty much stayed the same. Providing those opportunities through voice, through sound, to really create great learning environments for all students. I mean, I think when I think of Mote, I think of it in that way. Just to recap for everyone that's listening or hasn't seen Mote in a while, I just want to point out Mote is a Chrome extension. You install it in Chrome, and then it becomes accessible anywhere in your Google Workspace. And then now with the Mote 2.0, it's accessible wherever you are on the web.
Right.
It's right there wherever you may need it. You don't need to go searching for it. You see that little M icon. I love the new toolbar that shows up on the web for all the read alouds and the screenshots. And it's so, I want to say, like, your designers, if it's you.
It's Will. Come on, you seen him in action, how quickly we asked a question and then he did it overnight.
But you made it really simple and slick. Like, it's not obtrusive. It doesn't get in the way as you're working, and it's very clear to use. Mm-hmm. So for our teachers, I mean, you can integrate voice into anywhere in Google that you want, whether you're leaving comments in a Google Doc, whether I love when our primary teachers are using Mote to embed it in Google Slides so they can go over the sounds of words to students and create these cool drag and drop. You can put your voice right into your slides. You don't need to record an MP3 somewhere else and then go in and insert audio from it right there in Mote. You have it there in Google Forms. You can, and I want to talk about Google Forms at the end, because I know there's some neat things you can tell us about what Mote can do with Forms, but you can put your voice into Google Forms. And not only can you put your voice, but students can respond with their voice as well in Google Forms. I mean, that's become a great thing for our second language teachers as they're trying to create authentic conversations. It's hard to do it one-on-one in a classroom and really assess, but you can create a digital conversation using Mote through a Google Form. It's really neat to watch. But then so for the teacher, the applications are right there. But for the student, when you have that student that needs the text-to-speech and the translation and everything that's right there, you have that one little menu right on your sidebar that's right there on any document you are. You can skip around on a web page, hit play. It'll translate it. It'll give you a translated transcript. You can create a conversation about it. So I really wanted to bring that whole picture together for the people that are listening. Like, Mote's just not it's a very well designed integrated tool that's accessible anywhere. So I maybe I'm just talking and saying how pleased I am, but
you sold it. Look at it. You sold it for him. That's his retirement plan.
No, I mean, I've been using it for years. Any one of my students who I'm teaching at the university, I get them right on Mote right away, just because of so many things. And I use it for my voice feedback when I'm working with students. But we met. It was just last Friday, and you pointed out something with Mote with Google Forms that I didn't realize, and I think that's amazing with the new feature of Mote. So can you talk a little bit about Mote and what it can do with Forms?
Absolutely. Well, first off, thanks. That was a tour de force overview. So we've had an integration with Forms since sort of like mid 2021. So it was a second wave of stuff that we integrated. And it's become probably the single most popular integration for Mote because of all of these use cases that you talked about. So language learning, students using it to record their voice, students using it to hear the teacher's voice. But probably the single most important has been teachers who have students who have IEPs and have the need for or accommodation. And how impossible it is for a teacher typically to accommodate those students in an assessment environment just by sort of sitting next to them and reading things aloud to them, right? And I know there are software tools out there that maybe can support voice recording or text to speech inside of them, but Google Forms doesn't. And so it was great that teachers used Mote for this, and we supported this in many different ways. But then this light bulb moment we had last year talking to a bunch of teachers, and it's like, well, can't you just do this for me automatically? And we said, yeah, I guess we probably could. Mm-hmm. So we spent a week doing nothing but figuring that out. It was actually nearly a year ago. Got the whole team together and built a sort of V1 of this. And so what it allows you to do is you literally click the Mote icon on the page on the Google form, and you say, enable text to speech, and you say, yes. And you say, enable translation if you want, and you say, yes. Mm-hmm. And then abracadabra, when you share that with your students, if they have the Mote Chrome extension, every single text string on that page will have a little play button next to it. They can click to listen to it read aloud. And if they just literally click and hold, so they just hold the button down, they can translate it into any language that they want. And
that's so amazing.
Again, it's powerful.
That's possible. Yeah.
It's quite powerful of a tool. So if educators have not had the opportunity to kind of engage and explore with Mote specifically into Google Forms, definitely you want to check that out. One thing I want to mention is, and just for our listeners, is specifically just to talk about, the privacy and ethic component of Mote. And, it's a big issue here in the States. And we know, and, I can speak and Will can elaborate on it, but Mote is very responsible with AI, data privacy, and student safety, COPA, FERPA, EdLaw 2D in New York. If you're having any challenges getting those privacy agreements, done, you can definitely reach out to the Mote team, and they will ensure they get taken care of, from that standpoint. The one thing I also wanted to ask, I don't know, is there anything you want to add about privacy, Will, or am I good with that?
I think you said all the words.
All right.
I think GDPR would be the only other one. Yeah, COPA, FERPA, yes. EdLaw 2D in New York, super important. And we are hopefully increasingly just available through these statewide agreements.
That's what's happening, right? Yeah, a lot of them are now going statewide, so it makes things easier for companies like you guys, and for the districts. It's all in like a one-stop shop, for lack of a better term, where they can see that, this agreement is now statewide approved, and so on and so forth. So the one thing I wanted to ask, what's next for Mote? Like, are there any features or partnerships on the horizon that you're excited about that you are able to share, with us and the listeners? Well, if you can't, it's fine. That's, we get it. It'll come eventually. But figured your brain's probably always, thinking and concocting up something new. So we said, let's ask Will what he's got on the horizon.
Well, that's always a good question. There's a few features that have been requested a lot, and we are working on launching those in the next few weeks.
Okay.
But certainly in time for the summer. So the first of those is going to be dictionary and picture dictionary support.
Nice.
So we know that's important, and we've got a few bells and whistles on that experience that hopefully everyone will enjoy. But so that will be integrated into the Mote sidebar, again, helping those students for whom this is a really useful accommodation. Broadening our support. So we currently do support PDF reading if you've got a PDF on the web, or if you're in Google Drive, you can use the Mote sidebar to have that read aloud. But there's a few opportunities for us to improve that experience, and we've had a lot of folks ask for that. And so we are going to have a more comprehensive experience for uploading and reading PDFs. And I will say, you heard it here first, but there's something else which I'm pretty excited about, which is a sort of text prediction and support tool for students. So I see you smiling because it's just something I think came up in the meeting we had last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I know it's something which is written into a lot of students' IEPs and is an important feature. And so I'm hopeful we can build something which I think students will enjoy using and teachers will see value in, and will be an improvement on what's currently out there.
That's awesome.
Thank you for sharing. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I'm ready to wrap up. I know I want to be respectful of Will's time. Dan, do you have any other thoughts or questions?
I just want to thank you again. One, for meeting with us. Two, for being so accessible over the years. You and everyone in your company has always been accessible. I remember, coming out of COVID and installing Mote, and then talking about Conquer and doing that. And then over the years, it's just been great being able to have a relationship with you guys, and how you really have a vision of supporting educators. Like sometimes, you can go ahead and say that, but I think, from our experience and other people, like you really have your focus on educators and bringing better student learning environments, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, 1,000% appreciate that. Will, so I know I'm getting ahead of myself here. Are you going to be coming to NICEGate in November once again?
I hope so. Yeah, I need to check the calendar, but it was a lot of fun, and the weather wasn't too bad for upstate New York in November.
That's fair. It was a great venue. We had a lot of fun.
Great to see venue again. Yeah, so yeah, I hope to see you there. I'm going to be at ISTE this summer as well. So,
okay, good.
Anyone into ISTE, please drop me a line and come say hi. You mentioned already. I mean, I think we can include in the show notes some links. If you're brand new to Mote, or if you're coming back after a while, there's a few great ways to get access to Mote for you and your class. In fact, we have a free trial of up to 40 students, and you can check out. We've got some really nice ways you can see how students are engaging with these new features that we've rolled out, and actually track their usage, so you can identify if students are using read aloud, are using translation, and so on. So we'll share that in the show notes. But thank you so much, guys. I've really enjoyed the chat.
It's been a pleasure, Will.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, I love talking with Will and going to dinner with him.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a good time.
I did talk a lot about, how I mean, basically I was like, how I was a fan of the product. But, everything.
Well, we are. I'm looking at it right here, my toolbar on my screen as we speak.
It's one of those well-integrated, well-thought-out products, and I think everyone should really give it their due diligence to look at, see how this can improve your classroom environment. So awesome that Will met with us again.
Yeah, it's continually evolving. So that's going to wrap up episode 60. Once again, thank you for all your support. Listen on all the platforms, leaving those reviews, questions, comments, suggestions. Please reach out. Tech hard, work smart, live in adventure.
Find Andrew on all socials at @NicolaTech and Dan at WCSD Tech DR.